Alright, back on the Scout. Working on a couple things here. Trying to decide how I wanted to do that front axle, getting it actuated. So when I pull the lever inside on the floorboard, when I pull that lever back, the transfer case engages into four-wheel drive. The Blazer front axle was originally actuated using a vacuum pod, and this is the vacuum pod right here. And on the Blazers, when you pulled it or pushed the button to put it into four-wheel drive, it activated a vacuum switch that sucked this pod back in, and then it would pull on, back out of here, it would pull on this cable. That vacuum pod mounts right in this bracket and connects to that cable, and then when you activate the four-wheel drive, the vacuum pulls that pod back and it pulls that front axle, engages it. So I was originally going to think about maybe doing just a push-pull cable, a steel push-pull cable that locked in place to where you could pull it back and lock it. And then the more I got to thinking about that, I didn't really like that idea. And after doing some more research, I found there are pneumatic switches. So that is supposed to be an air switch that would have pressure to it, and then you could pressure coming in, and then you would pull the switch and it would send pressure to whatever you wanted to work. I'm going to use it in the reverse fashion, so that when I put vacuum to the switch, in theory, it should work that vacuum pod. So I've got just a mock-up here to test it to make sure it's going to work. Got vacuum line ran into my carburetor. Got it ran into my switch and then out to the vacuum pod. So when I start the Scout, in theory, I should be able to pull that switch. It'll actuate that pod, and then I should be able to close that switch, and the pod should release. So that's my theory. I'm going to test it to make sure. I haven't done it yet. Let's get this thing fired up. And then the vacuum pod is not working at the moment, so let's pull the switch. And boom, we pull the switch. The pod retracts back, and then that in turn will pull on that cable, locking in the front end, so you've got four-wheel drive. So I should be able to push the switch in and it should release. Just like that. Perfect. I think that is going to be awesome. So what I will do is I will hook this pod back up into its bracket. And I'm kind of glad I kept all that stuff. I didn't think I was going to be using it, but I did. Or I will. So, I'll get it hooked back in that bracket. I will figure out a place somewhere down here that will work. I might have to modify the bracket a little bit. Get that mounted back in place. And then I will cut a hole in the firewall, run a vacuum line, mount that switch inside, run a vacuum line through the firewall to the carburetor, and then another vacuum line out from the switch to the pod, and boom. All you have to do is when you pull the four-wheel drive lever on the floor, when you pull it back into 4 high or 4 low, just pull the switch on the dash or on the firewall, either one, where I decide to put it, and it should lock in the front end, and you've got four-wheel drive. So, that is going to be the next project, I do believe. I did get my weather stripping in for my other door here, so I've got new weather stripping around the door. It's kind of dark on this side of the shop, but so she closes up nice and tight. Hopefully, like I said before, when I get the window tracks in, hopefully that'll seal up on the window tracks. Alright, I guess that's all for now. I will let you know when I come across more stuff. Thanks.